Welcome to the Ring of WNBA show. March Madness is almost here. Selection Sunday is coming up. The conference tournament's just wrapped up. I'm Seerat Sohi, and I'm joined by Mariah Rose and Lexi Brown. Mariah is a host and content creator with a background in broadcast journalism. And if you're deeply online like I am, you have probably already seen her sharing the world of pop culture and sports, educating the girls, the gays, the theys on TikTok and all these new sports fans that we're getting. Lexi is a guard for the Seattle Storm, a WNBA champion, and it feels especially worth noting today, a former Duke Blue Devil, and together they're the hosts of a brand new women's basketball podcast called Full Circle. How you guys doing?
Good. That was a cute little intro. Appreciate that. That was nice.
I'm still getting used to hearing Lexi called a Seattle Storm guard.
Go
Storm!
Right? Yeah.
Even this weekend when I was introducing myself to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, she plays in WNBA," and they're like, "Who do you play for?" I'm like, "This Storm. I play for the Storm now, not the Sparks." So I'm still getting used to it too.
Yeah, I mean, look, you had about 4 weeks now to sit with it. How are you feeling?
I'm excited. I'm really excited. I've built a really nice life in LA, and people think when you get traded, you move away completely. No, it's just probably for the season, unless I fall in love with Seattle, which is quite possible. I can move all my things to Seattle, but I just got a spot out in LA. I'm an LA girl now, so I'm excited. I think the city's really excited for the Seattle Storm this season. I'm excited to be reunited with NECA, play with Skylar, Gabby, Ezzy. I think we have a really good, solid squad, veteran-led, and I have a facility that I can go live in, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, you got your practice facility.
I did.
I was listening to the pod, and I was listening back to it, preparing for this. And before you got traded, you were talking about LA and how you're so excited to finally have some stability. And I was just getting so sad because I was like, man, she has no idea what's coming.
No idea what's ahead.
Yeah. But you got your facility and you got, you're in a pretty good spot. So I'm excited to see what you guys do this season. I feel like you guys are definitely championship contenders. And
for sure.
Yeah. And hey, you're recording from Gil's Arena, the setup there where you also pod as well. So
yeah,
you're still, you got your LA roots going as well.
Yeah, sure do.
Awesome. So I wanted to start off by just getting into some March Madness chatter. There's never been more parity in the college game. Right now, SC, UConn, odds-on favorites to win it all, both at plus 290. UCLA, USC, Texas, tied at plus 50. Notre Dame lagging a little bit behind. But I thought, look, any of these teams could win the title, so I thought it'd be fun to do X Factors for all these teams and obviously show a little love to Duke winning their first ACC title since, I think, 2013. The first in the Kara Lawson era. But I'm curious, where did you guys want to start? Was there a game that stuck out to you guys particularly?
I was really impressed with UCLA. I think it's hard to play a team as many times as you play, a conference team and then rematching again in the championship. So they're poised down the stretch, feeding Lauren Betts, who's obviously their best player. I think she had a great game. She had a great tournament. And I think they did a good job at slowing Juju down. You can't really do too much with Juju because she's so talented in so many different aspects of the game. But I always love when a team has a really good game plan and you can tell that they have a really good game plan and they execute it. And that's just the basketball nerd in me when I'm just I see what they was trying to do and they did it and they're able to win. And that's really exciting for the city because I know it's been all about USC and Juju all season long, even though UCLA was the number one team for most of the season. So that must have felt really good for them.
Yeah, I love that you bring up the game plan because that felt like one of the biggest changes from the first two games. And also it feels like the biggest win of Corey Close's career. The biggest for maybe the program in general.
Yeah.
I know that, they've got some NIT history, but it just looking at their history, their first Big Ten title in the Corey Close era, just a huge win for them, especially coming off of everything that they were going through after. I was at that UCLA USC game and Corey Close, impassioned in the press conference, red in the face.
Yeah.
Literally said, if you're not ready to be what this team needs to be, don't show up on the bus, pulling out some movie stuff. So I think that they needed this. And now they're in a really good position heading into March. Maria, what do you think is going to be key for them making a deep run?
Here's the thing. It's all about winning when it matters. And watching what Juju did to them the last couple of times, it's like they came back when it mattered. And we talked about this on our show, Lexi, about prioritizing winning. And that's the thing with March Madness. It's like you get one shot, you don't get multiple. And so I think while we had seen Juju put it on them in big moments, like Lexi said, it being a very Juju all over LA, like one thing that I think that we learned is that they know how to win when it really matters. And that's the biggest thing going into March Madness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That second half, I feel like we finally kind of saw what we needed to see from UCLA, especially from Lauren Betts, like 13 points in the second half. Also just thought it was great. And Lexi, I'd be curious for your perspective on this as well, as just as a player, like going through, we always talk about X's and O's, but there's so much more that happens on the floor that we don't really get to see. But one thing that she said was she knew that she wasn't going to get calls. And it felt like that kind of bugged her in their first matchup. But at halftime, it was just a big thing like, hey, work through the frustration of all of this. The refs are not going to be very tight with their whistle right now. And she just decides to dominate, you know? Like she gets Clarice Akinwafo in foul trouble. Then immediately after that is like, give me the ball again on Rhea Marshall. And even if she doesn't get the ball in those circumstances, like it's a Kiki Rice drive, it's a Gabriela Jaquez cut, but it felt like she really just like set the tone and just decided to shut out like any circumstance that wasn't going to allow her to win.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm not a player that likes a ton of contact. So when I do get it, like it's earned. But I think the best thing that I learned like growing up is like my dad always taught me to go play for the score. Don't play to get fouled. You know, if you go up strong and powerful and you finish the shot, you'll probably get an and one instead of, you know, just going up trying to expecting the hit. And I think that's like just a maturity thing, especially with someone at her size. Like first of all, I can't imagine being that big, running around and just having 3-4 bodies on you at all times. So like shout out to her for being tough and being one of the best players in the country. But when you're someone like that, I mean, I see it in the W too. Like sometimes you don't get the benefit of the doubt because you are so much bigger. So that's just something like, it's not going to change when she gets to the W. I can tell her that right now. Like it might get worse because you're so big. You're going to have to work way harder to get these calls because people think you're so big. So it's like, this little person isn't fouling her. There's no way that this person pushed her down. Like she's huge. So I think like it's been really good seeing her maturity at that position. And I think she, like Mariah said, she showed up when it mattered and got them the win.
That's a good point. It's not going to get any easier for her. Like she gets the W, the defenders are going to get even more physical. They're going to be bigger. They're going to be smarter. They're going to be stronger. Right. And yeah, it's a great point because they're going to kind of need that. Like, it feels like USC is maybe the only team that's like really had her number in that way too. Because it feels like she's been able to deal with that for most of the season. And look, like they've only lost 2 games. They only ever lost to USC.
I mean, for someone that size, sometimes you just have to throw bodies to like frustrate her. And USC is one of the few teams that has like the depth to do that. Not many teams have just a large, strong player that they can just sacrifice as far as fouls are concerned. And sometimes that's like one of the only strategies you have. Like sometimes you might have that player. Your job is to piss this player off. Your job is to use all 5 of your fouls and we're going to get this win. And then next game you can play back to normal. But again, not all teams have high enough IQ to execute a game plan like that or enough bodies to sacrifice like a whole very important player, you know, to just get under someone's skin.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's insane to hear you say, Lexi, that the refs will be like, okay, she's big, so obviously this smaller player didn't foul her, or they're not going to call.
We say it. I'm a small player. I'm like, there's no way y'all thought I pushed that big girl over. Like, there's no way.
So is that a testament? Is that a testament to the intelligence of the defender and or acting skills of the defender? Or is that a testament to kind of the negligence of the refs? Because y'all should know this by now. Because we see this happen.
I'm not going to do too much for the refs because I need them on my side this season because I do plan on trying to draw a few more fouls. But yeah, there has to be a healthy balance of, okay, that was a foul, that was a flop. We know that we understand that this woman is large. We get it. But like she is getting annihilated in the post. So you guys need to throw her a bone from time to time.
Wait, Lexi, I'm hearing maybe that you use your size as an advantage in these situations, perhaps that like, hey, maybe you are being a little extra physical, maybe you are fouling, but you're like, hey, come on.
Hey, if
Couldn't be
someone's
me.
like, I get for some reason, when me and Mariah we just had an episode with Elizabeth Williams, and I was telling her because she's a defensive player, and she's always been just like really tall and really athletic, and I'm not. And for some reason, like, even though I'm the same height as some of these bigger guards in the league, people don't consider me like a big guard because I don't play like that.
Because she doesn't like
yes,
contact.
I tried to get
But she's working on
guards,
it.
like to try and post me up. So, I try to use my quickness and get around. Or like I'll flop, or like if they try to do too much because they know I don't really like all that contact, then I'll be like, okay, you want to do too much? I'm going to do too much too. And now you have a charge and I'll start ball. So it's really just a strategic thing and working to your strengths. And I know I'm not a super, super physical player, but if someone wants to, get super physical with me, I have to do something, I can't just roll over. But
for sure.
Got to work smarter. And that's me.
Okay, I see you. You were saying too that before you got traded, like you thought you'd be playing a little bit more of the three. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that how? Yeah. Okay.
Well, no, not anymore. That's out the window.
Right, yeah, but you still added all these new things to your bag though, so I'm excited to see it. Yeah.
I did. Thank you.
Nice. So, the other side of the Betts equation too is she talked about getting uncomfortable in other ways as well when it came to defending Juju Watkins, especially in that second half. They really they went out of their way to trap, to zone, like 3 on the ball. First half didn't work. Like Juju was just making those reads easily. But then the second half, they make some adjustments, and the one-on-one defenders do a great job. But Betts also steps up, and these are the moments this season.
How many blocks did she have that game?
I think she had 4 blocks. I think it was 4. I should have it. But yeah. I mean, there was also beyond the blocks, like the amount of times that she just deterred an attempt, the amount of times that you just don't even like look at the paint because she's in there. Like those things don't end up on the box score, but they matter a lot. But for the Juju side of this, like these moments are the ones where it feels like I get the most curious about where we're going to see the growth from Juju, because she can read the defense if you put 2 on her, if you put 3 on her at this point. Like, she's a very smart player, but when they put her in situations where you don't necessarily know exactly what decision you should be making, like, those are the ones where I'm kind of curious to see, like, in the tournament, like, as she watches the tape from this one, and depending on who they play, how that progresses.
Yeah. Mariah, do you have any opinion on Juju?
I think she'll be all right. I think that, like you said, they just got her number this time. You know what I mean? Like, and this happens. It's like if somebody beats you one way, you adjust, you figure it out. If your team is good enough and talented enough to make those necessary adjustments, they do, and then it works out. So I think that she's in a good spot, probably has a little bit of a chip on her shoulder, and I think that she'll figure it out. Some people are like, in these moments, it's looking like she's inconsistent and blah, blah, blah. But I always feel for a player like her where the game plan is against you. You know what I mean? So it's like, she's still young. She still has a ton to learn. And I think that she will. She definitely got the IQ for it.
Yeah. And I think it's like a matchup thing too. So there's not very many players in the country, like pound for pound, that can just match up with Juju just off the strength of just her body and her athleticism. So sometimes it just has to do with that. Some people might just not have the roster to just keep up with her at all, which is why teams are sending 2-3 players at her at a time. But again, like, I think Juju shoulders a lot of the criticism when they lose. Obviously, her performances when they win. Like, if she's not scoring like 40, people are still very critical of her, like, inefficiency at times. But again, she's so young, and what she's doing is really insane and very impressive at her age. But I mean, I'm gonna turn the spotlight on her teammates. You have one teammate that has 3 people on them. You need to be ready to make a play. You need to be ready to step up, because then that will free up Juju. But on the flip side, Juju has to be able to trust her teammates. We don't know what goes on in practices in the locker room. I remember when I was in college, like, yes, there are teammates that you have that are open, but sometimes they open for a reason. I'm not gonna give them the ball in this moment. I'm gonna take my shot, because my shot over 2 people might be better than this person's shot over nobody. But that's sports. That's just the reality of being on a team. So I think as she matures, I think they need to bring her one more person that can score on their own, like just another playmaker. And I think that will open up the floor for Juju because I want her to break all the records. I want her to do all the things. But if they don't put talented pieces around her, not saying that she doesn't have them already, but now people, every year, people are going to be planning for Juju a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And now with this transfer stuff, you don't got to sit out. You can really build a team that suits Juju's game and will help you win championships. So I'm excited to see her in March. I agree with Mariah. She's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. Now she got a chip on her shoulder because she didn't get that championship. So I'm really excited to see Juju in March and USC in March because I think they're all going to have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, I also love that you bring up, like, the fact that it is a game plan thing, because one of the things that's really fun about this USC-UCLA matchup is that they've played 3 times already this season, and I hope we get a 4th one, because I just want to see what it looks like now that...
Yeah, like, what are y'all going to do now? Yeah, what's next?
Yeah, exactly.
I think Juju going to go for 60. Watch.
Honestly,
no,
I would
she'll
not
go
be
nuts.
surprised. Yeah.
UCLA should be afraid of that. That's terrible. That's why I said it always matters winning when it matters most, because now UCLA got their championship, and now if they meet again, it's really going to matter then. So be careful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They'll probably meet in the Final Four, right?
Potentially. Ooh. I mean, that's what's so exciting about this particular March Madness, and why I'm so excited about Selection Sunday. It just feels like any team could win, and everything is going to come down to matchups. Like, I'm not confident. Do you guys have a pick for the title? Are you Duke? Particularly confident? Okay. All right.
My 100% biased pick is I want to see UConn win it. And I said this on our show, but it's kind of like picking the Warriors back in 2015, 2016. I know nobody wants to really hear that because it's like, UConn.
UConn, okay.
I'm rooting for Paige. I feel like we've seen her go through so much in her college career that it's like external circumstances stopping her from winning.
Please.
Yeah, like it's and things that aren't her fault, like injuries, and I want to see her win. And this is her. And I love Juju. I love South Carolina, LSU, whatever. Duke. But
whatever.
But this is Paige's last shot. So
yeah, it would be really cool. It would be really cool to see Paige win a title before. And she actually she sat down with one of my colleagues, Mirren Fader, for a story before the season started. And it was a very honest story about how she just doesn't feel like if she wins a title before she leaves that like she's gonna feel like she left something on the table. Now, like, there's so much more to these situations. It's so hard to win a national title, but you know that's like on her mind. Like, she's walking into
that's why girls go to UConn.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Like almost every UConn player I know has won at least one championship in their career at UConn. So that's a very fair expectation for her to have. But in the case that doesn't happen, like, I really hope that she doesn't feel like she didn't leave UConn and women's basketball in a better place than she found it, because she absolutely has helped with this explosion of interest in the women's game. So I really hope that, like, her whole career isn't predicated on if she wins a national championship or not. I know that's important to her, but like what she has done for women's basketball at her young age and her advocacy for Black female athletes as well. Like you championship, cool, but like what she's done overall, despite the injuries, has been like so amazing to me.
She shouldn't feel that way, but I understand why she does. Yeah. Because in sports, there are just franchises where the expectation is championship. Lexi, you're a Celtics fan. You know that. Like that's the championship expectation at UConn. But I hope that she finds comfort in knowing, like I said, a lot of these circumstances that have led to her not getting that championship aren't entirely her fault. So I hope that she finds a little bit of comfort in that.
Yeah.
Definitely. And also UConn just exists in a completely different context than the team that she grew up rooting for and probably wanting to play for too. Like, it used to be that if you played at UConn, you were going to win titles. Now the women's game has so much skill and parity in college basketball that it's like, you can't necessarily beat yourself up for going to UConn and not winning a title. Like, it's just, there's so many other teams.
Yeah. And it's different now too. With like, It's like UConn, they'll have their crazy non-conference, and then they'll disappear for 3 months and play in their horrible conference, and then reemerge, and then we're like, oh, y'all made it to the Final Four again? Where have y'all been? We haven't seen y'all in a couple of months because y'all been beating up everybody in the Big East for 3 months. So, I mean, I remember growing up watching UConn. Those Notre Dame UConn games were crazy. Who else was in the Big East in there? Like 2010s. Like the Big East was like a gauntlet at one point, and now it's like not. And all these other teams and other conferences are like beating the crap out of each other, all conference, and then UConn is just like la 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 la, and then they always manage to get to the Final Four, that's what's always impressed me about UConn and what Gino does is he keeps them very locked in and very prepared, despite the lack of competitiveness in their conferences the last few years. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that because it's not easy to do that, to keep your team locked in.
I also want to throw out the fact that some of those players that were playing on the iconic UConn teams that won 3-4 times might have been at a different school if it were the NIL era. Let's just put that out there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So it's harder now.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation too about
100%.
what college sports will look like.
Yeah.
If we had NIL.
Yeah, UConn especially is like an interesting situation with NIL, especially because of like how Gino feels about it. But I've noticed that they keep getting like these international prospects too, because like they have a lot of NIL restrictions. So it feels like they've kind of tapped into that for now. But if that changes, then I think UConn's future in recruitment could be very different. But then at the same time, they still have the legacy. They still have Gino. So they just got Sarah Strong, who is an American, who could have gone anywhere, could have had the NIL. Yeah. So like they're still UConn at the end of the day. It's like everybody, they're still really good. It's just everybody else is now leveled up too. But I also love that you brought up this dynamic that they have where like they have this early season gauntlet and then like they go into conference play and you're just not sure because in trying to like figure out, like I've just been trying to figure out, okay, how does every team win and how does every team lose? And for UConn, I feel like
you never know how they lose.
Was that?
And if they lose, it's like to one of the best teams in the country. So it's just like, okay, they lost, whatever. So
exactly,
but usually they are winning in these games. Which again, to your point, that's like kind of an advantage to them because now no one really knows how to prepare for them when March comes around.
Exactly.
Because you're like, they've been winning by 75 for weeks. Like, what are we supposed to do with this film? And how do we prepare for this team? So I see what y'all are doing over there, UConn.
Yeah,
we're on to y'all.
Yeah, this
we're
is funny.
on to
They got
y'all.
the Formioli. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they do. Because like even looking at their losses this season, right? It's like I don't know, man. Like they have like a loss against Notre Dame where it just felt like they just didn't really necessarily make the right decisions, but they would fix that in a March context. Against Tennessee, they just didn't hit their threes. Like they played a really good game against Tennessee, in my opinion. Didn't hit their threes. USC, they didn't have AZ Fudd. Now they're healthy. AZ is crushing it. AZ is like just incredible. Since that Tennessee loss, 16 points on 45% shooting from three, active defensively, like getting to the rim too, like showing these WNBA scouts that there's like more to her game as well, like using the threat of her shot to get to the rim. Sarah Strong has been incredible. And I just look at them and I'm like, look, this is a number one defense and number one offense and a number two defense. I am struggling to find that sort of weakness that like you can kind of like every other team, you can kind of just say like, okay, like Texas doesn't shoot enough threes. USC, if they don't move the ball around after like who's going to score when Juju is not like every other team, you kind of have that one thing with UConn. I'm really struggling.
It's like, exactly. And I'm just like, that's why I'm like, good luck to whoever meets up with them in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, because like you can't ever count out UConn. No matter, we said on our show the other day, no matter what type of season UConn is having, they're always a threat to get to the Final Four, no matter what. Like, it's UConn. And I think that's, with whether they have NIL, no NIL, I think like that's always how UConn's going to be.
All right. I feel like you're kind of chomping at the bit to talk about Duke. I just want to give you the floor here. Like, talk to me. How did that feel? How did that feel watching that game?
It was, where was I? I wasn't even able to watch it. I was doing something, so I was following it on my phone. I got to see them play in Vegas a few months ago. And it was one of the rare games where they ran the score up. So I was like, oh, this team is very talented, because I was a bit concerned with their offensive output for a little bit, because I was like, why can't we score more than 50, 60 points in a game when we have so many talented offensive players? So, but I always was impressed by their defense. So they never worried me about winning games, because at the end of the day, they were always going to defend. So the one game I got to see them play, they scored, I think it was like in the 80s or 90s. It was like very high scoring. So I was really excited for them. I think what Kara's built there, you know, she inherited Duke kind of at a low point, kind of at a turning point. And that always happens when you're, you know, pivoting into a new, like they call it the Kara era, a new whole thing. So I think once she got her people in place, once she got her players in place, she got to put her system in place. Like, I was never worried about Duke. So I think, not to take anything away from what Duke did, Notre Dame's kind of having like a mini meltdown right now. And I don't know why, but Duke took advantage of that. Like Mariah always says, you win when it matters. And they did. So I'm like really excited for them. I think it's a great spring point into March. It's always fun to win a championship entering into the tournament. You have like a lot of confidence. So I'm really excited for them. And yeah, like, hopefully they make it to the Final Four so I can see them play again, because we will be at the Final Four, which we're very excited about. So I would love for them to make it all the way to Tampa, because I will be insufferable, and everyone knows that. So.
we're gonna be sick of you if they actually make it to the Final Four.
Oh yeah, 100%. Prepare to be sick of me.
Yeah. I also, man, like, Alucia Conwa was, I think, shout out to Andrea Carter for this stat. The first player in the century to win the ACC Most Outstanding Player in a tournament coming off the bench, and just huge against Notre Dame.
Very impressive,
right?
Yeah.
Wow. Like, how often do you see that happen? It's like
you don't.
Exactly.
Don't.
You literally don't see that happen.
You don't.
You literally don't.
Not this century.
Yeah.
No. But I think that's what makes Duke dangerous as well. Is like, yes, you have your obvious 1-2 punch, but like, from what the games that I've seen, it's always like that third person. It's always someone different. And then you have a outstanding freshman on your team. Like, not like when you have an outstanding freshman, like, I think that's always an X factor, because they're young enough to where they're like still playing pretty free and have that confidence if you instilled it to them. But then, like, also, like, people don't really know much about them because they're just babies. So when you have someone who can play at a high level at a young age, they're kind of your X factor until people are like, all right, now we know who this is. Now we can scout. But like, she's like, Toby's been like, here, go get him. Do you? And then come back in. You know, if you have one of those games, we're going to leave you out there. If you struggle a little bit, we're going to bring you back over here. You're going to come sit with us. So they've had a lot of accolades, postseason accolades, a lot of postseason success. That's why I picked them. They're going all the way.
I will say it's hard. It's hard to win as a star, and it's a lot easier to win as a team. And so, like, what I'm hearing you talk about is team. We just talked about this with Juju. It's like, all right, y'all, they got 3 people on Juju. The rest of y'all need to be able to make a play. But it sounds like teamwork at Duke. That's scary.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Yes, for sure.
100%. Especially with this team. Like, they just have so much depth. I feel like that really helped them too, especially against the Notre Dame team, which we can talk about in a second, that honestly looked a little bit tired as well.
Yeah.
Like, that might be the biggest issue with them. But with Duke, it's like, man, like, they
never stop moving. Yes.
They never stop moving. Like, that has to be exhausting, especially like going down, like, you're playing every day, tournament games. And then NC State, unfortunately, like, Isaiah James goes down as well, and hopefully she's okay as well. But then, you know, they have to kind of figure it out on the fly in that moment too. Whereas like with Duke, it's like, okay, like you can get like Fournier going too as well. Like you get like a great performance out of DeHusis, like in the semifinal game as well. It's just like those moments are also like they get you excited for March too, because like you said, you just don't know who's gonna come out of nowhere and be that player this time around, and like no one really knows what to do with them. They have a couple players who I think could do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what March is. You know, you have your like your little gems of March. So that's my favorite part of March, is like the player that like just goes crazy randomly. Everyone's like, who is that? Mm-hmm. That's my favorite part about March.
That's the best.
I will say, when a team looks tired, like how you mentioned Notre Dame is looking tired, that to me, Lexi, you could probably speak to this a lot better than I can. that's reminiscent of coaching. Like that, I feel like having your players prepared like a Duke, where it's like, okay, they're running around 24/7 and they still look great and they don't look tired. Whereas a team that's like, okay, down the stretch, we're getting to March and y'all look tired. That to me sounds like coaching. Just saying.
I mean, I've
Not
never been
trying to blame anybody,
care,
but
but I haven't been to a care practice before. I can only imagine they probably run a lot. I'm assuming that it's probably not a lot of punishment running. Now being a pro, I realize like how counterproductive that is. Like there's so many drills that you can incorporate running into that is still contributing to basketball being played and not just running up and down and up and down. But like I've never been to a practice, but I know in the pros, like we don't like suicides are not being ran. Like we're not doing 17s. Like anything we're doing running related, we usually have a basketball in our hands.
I was about to say, y'all aren't going to the track because basketball teams in high school and college, they be at that track.
We was on the track. We are not.
They're going up and down those stairs.
I did not get a scholarship for the track team. Why are we out here? Why are we out here? But I mean, she has them super well prepared. But I think that Notre Dame team, like Hannah and Olivia, carry a lot of that load. And I think if they want to make a deep run, they're going to have to be able to like, just kind of like Juju, trust their teammates because, yeah, they do look a little tired, but I think they'll be fine. They get a week break, weekish, 2 weeks until they start playing again. So I think they'll be nice and re-energized and another team with a chip on their shoulder because everyone thought that they were going to run away with the ACC title and they didn't. So, I mean, that's another team that's just going to be playing with a different type of energy, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I want to see them get a little bit back on track defensively too. Like, all these games that they've lost, their defense has fallen apart, and then they can't run and like do all these things that like Hannah and Olivia like to get off in transition. Then Sonia Citron gets a 3, and like Leah Tu King gets on the offensive boards. Like they have just a really impossible transition game to guard. But if you're not defending, and then all of a sudden you're in the half court and you're dealing with like kind of like the physical defenders you're going to be meeting in March Madness, like it's a bad recipe for Notre Dame. Like,
I mean, so much of their scoring is transition, and you don't get transition unless you play defense. So I think that's just been their biggest problem. And like, as good as a defender Hannah is, like she does gamble a lot, and she puts herself out of position a lot. Like as great as she is on the ball, you don't get all those steals without gambling, probably more than you should. And lucky for her, she has a skill set where she does get those steals more times than she doesn't. But those times that she doesn't, because I used to get over it all the time at Duke. I led ACC in steals. Sometimes you do too much. Like, okay, you do not have to try and get every steal. Let's win this game and get a stop. So again, I think that's something that's going to come with her maturity. She's still very, very young. But I'd rather be able to like dial someone back than have to turn them up for sure, like every single time.
Mm-hmm. That was also something that was so fun about watching Zoe Brooks against Hannah because they have history. Like they played against each other in AAU, and I felt like Zoe Brooks is like one of the first players that I really saw be able to take advantage of when Hannah tries to like do a little bit too much, and like she can kind of keep the ball in a cage. Like she's not going to get her pocket picked by her. I imagine that happened enough times in high school that she was like, never again.
She's like, no, I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready
like, now I know what's up. But now I know what's up. So like, but like like this is part of getting like deeper into the spotlight too. Like people do start to figure out the things that you're the best at as well. So I'm curious how she'll react to that. Also, I just want to see more Kate Koval minutes, especially like if you're struggling defensively. She's such a good rim protector. I get that she's just a freshman, but at the same time, like she was awesome for them at the start of the season, and I just don't understand why she's not playing more, honestly.
Yeah. We will never understand what goes on in the minds of these coaches after playing in a league, Athletes Unlimited, without coaches. I have developed a new respect for their decision making because it is not easy. And there's always I will say 9 times out of 10, there is a reason somebody is not playing that is just not being spoken about because boundaries and you respect the locker room and what's going on. Mm-hmm. But I mean, they have lost more games than they've won as of late, right? Like
lost 3 of their last 5.
Yeah, so I mean, they got to make some type of adjustment. So I see her probably playing a little bit more minutes, but again, just a freshman. I don't know if they're going to put their tournament hopes in the hands of a baby, but they just might. I don't know.
I think they should. I kind of think they should.
They should. Might as well.
Yeah.
Might as well.
See what happens. See what happens. Yeah. Yeah. But okay, that's so interesting though. Like, how has that experience changed how you see coaching?
Well, I have gained respect for sure. But then I also am just like, y'all don't have to act that way. You really don't. Like, you don't got to scream at us to get a point across. You don't have to embarrass players. You don't have to make examples of people to get them to perform for you. And understanding people's personalities is key. I mean, pretty much everything that you learn about being a good teammate goes into being a good coach. And, you know, that's why I feel like me personally, coaches that like didn't play at a high level, I don't really connect with them all the time that well because they've never been on a team before and they don't know how to be a good teammate. They just have watched from the sidelines and analyzed, which again is a very valuable skill, very important to be a coach. But for me, like just being in that environment, coaches, and just seeing how it affects everybody and how more free flowing and fun and happy everybody is, I'm like, okay, coaches, like growing up, I look back and I'm like, yeah, y'all did too much. Why are you screaming at us? We're 17, 18 years old. Why are you cussing us out?
Yeah.
Like, we're just playing basketball. So again, the respect it has increased though, for sure, because you cannot make everybody happy, but you can, you know, promote a positive environment. And I think that's sometimes where coaches miss the mark.
Is there a coach right now in college basketball, like if you could go back now and you were like going through a recruiting process that you would want to play for?
Oh, Kara, for sure. I was in the hot locker room one time in Vegas and I was like, oh my God, Kara, I want to run through a wall for you right now, girl. Oh my gosh. Like, it was after a win too. Like just the way she hypes them all up and embraces them all and, you know, keeps them locked in, but like allows them to celebrate small wins. Like it was a random game in December, maybe, I think. But like you would have thought they just won the national championship. So it's like I would have loved to play for a coach like her. And then obviously Dawn Staley, for sure. Even though I probably could have transferred to South Carolina if I really wanted to. But that's just like SEC, not for me. So, but I've always been a huge Dawn Staley fan.
I knew that answer was coming. I was like, come on, Lexi.
We all love Dawn. She's like Princess Diana of coaches. Love her.
That's a winner. Like
people's coach. Yeah, and a freaking winner. Like, jeez.
100%.
And I like her outfits.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I feel like I also love like anybody who can like go like high fashion and comfort at the same time. Like
that's that would 100%. Be Notre Dame coach. Yeah. Be stepping.
Yeah.
Whole coaching staff.
She actually gets styled by Leah Tu King, who is wants to be a professional stylist. Like she styled Hannah and Olivia as well this year.
Oh yeah, their whole coaching staff always looks put together. It's funny that we're mentioning that because in the W they don't dress up anymore, right? All in the NBA they all are in their quarter zips. I told coaches last year, I said, I want y'all need to start dressing up again. Like I'm tired of looking at y'all and I feel like I'm in PE class and we're at a game. Like y'all are just like in your matching quarter zips. Yeah. Like we've stepped it up as players. Like I need the coaches in the pro level to like step it up with their dress, with their fits. They say they're more comfortable on the bench and they're whatever. I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't care. I want an elevated look on the bench. Like I love watching Kim and Niele and their little stilettos marching up and down. Like I love that. And I love seeing all the coaches and their fits on the bench. Now we look at our games and they're all in sweatsuits. I'm like,
it helps you get to know them too. Like it's marketing. You know what I'm saying? Like my mom doesn't really know anything about women's college basketball, but she gonna turn that game on to see what Dawn has on. Like
exactly. 100%. I'm like, why don't y'all want to be cute at the games? Like
you're on TV.
You're on TV. You want to be in a quarter zip matching? Y'all look like you're at summer camp. No.
You know me. My quarter zip would be bedazzled.
Get that messaging out. You coaches, you need to start putting clothes on again. They're like, well, we don't like packing. Look who you're talking to. People are like wearing fur coats in the middle of the summer to games. Like we don't care. Pack it so we can look good on the bench.
My most viewed video on TikTok to this day is me talking about Coach Sydney Carter and her outfits. You know, the pink latex pants.
She had edits, highlight edits of passes to the players and warm-ups and her heels and her cute little outfits. That whatever run of that time that was, she was like busting them videos out in every outfit. She looked amazing. I remember that. I was like, look at her go. I love that. That was, see, bring that back to the W. So let's start this campaign. Okay.
100%. Like, it totally adds to the pageantry of college sports too. Like, you figure out so much about somebody's identity and who they are based on
what they put on.
When you have like intentional self-presentation, you really have to think about it. On that note, South Carolina, Dawn Staley and her McDonald's All-Americans, not too shabby.
What's new?
Doing all right there.
And what more right? Wet news. South Carolina wins again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. I
was about to say, when you lose, it's news.
Right.
Like,
that's the only time people want to talk about South Carolina, which for the life of me, I don't understand. It's so freaking weird. Like, are y'all bored with greatness? I guess, because...
Yes.
We do get bored with greatness. We absolutely do.
So annoying.
That's not their problem, though.
Right. Like, it's not the girls' fault. Like, we need to put them on this pedestal because what they do is so amazing. And their consistency is amazing. So... shout out to South Carolina. I mean, there's not really much to say. We've been saying the same thing about them for 6 years now? 5 years? Like, Don just always has them prepared. Like, overly prepared.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not like UConn. They do have, like, weaknesses that people know about. But I still think they're going to make a deep run. But like I said, y'all know who I picked to win the championship. So
it is Duke. Yeah. Even with the weaknesses aspect of it, though, like, I feel like they have played themselves out of a lot of what we thought were going to be their weaknesses. Like, Ashlyn Watkins goes down. We have all these concerns about their rim protection, their defensive rebounding. They lose a game to Texas, and then they avenge themselves in the conference tournament with this game that I just was so impressed by the front court. Like, I was impressed defensively overall. Like, they just have these, like, pro-style rotations that it just has to be so frustrating to play against as a college team because they're just so smart. And they're obviously, like, they have the athleticism, they have the chemistry, they know each other really well. But I just felt like they came into that game knowing exactly how Texas could beat them. And Chloe Kitts and Sanaya Fagan were just like, we're not going to let that happen again. Like, we get that we don't necessarily have, like, the same size, but we're going to beat you with our length. We're going to make really smart rotations. We're just going to out-physical you. It felt like they had a little bit more energy. Like, the depth aspect of it definitely helps, too. But I just love the game plan. Like, just... swarming Texas, who's a team that just, like, frankly, also Bree Hall. Did you guys see Bree Hall after the game talking about
what? What did she say after the game?
So apparently Madison Booker in their second matchup.
When they was running, when she was like, "You can't guard me."
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
So I think,
and Bree Hall said, and I took that personally.
I personally have never been high on Texas because their lack of three-point shooting. It's infuriating for me to watch as someone who loves three-point shooting. They're a great team, but, like, you're not going to win many games shooting, like, less than 5 3. I'm sorry. Like, I know they have won a lot of games, but it's just like, I don't know. Like, that just can't be a fun way to play basketball. That's just my opinion. Like, I remember watching one game. I think they shot 3 total threes. I was like, I don't like this. But shout out to them because they found a lot of success. But South Carolina came in and belt to ass it, for sure.
Yeah, out of 363 teams, they are the 362nd points that they get from the three-point line, which is like...
Who's last?
I didn't check. I didn't check. I don't want to know.
That's crazy. And that's very crazy, but also very impressive how much success they have still found despite that.
That's true. That's true. It's just one of those things, though, where I feel like, okay, even if your personnel isn't necessarily designed for it, you need to be getting a few more threes than that. You know,
that's always been my problem with, like, college coaches. Is like, yes, you want to win college games, but if you have future pros on your team, You need to prepare them to play at the pro level. And at the pro level, we're shooting threes. Like, and even if you're not shooting them in the game, like, I hope at least they're shooting them like in practice or something like that. Because, like, personally, when I was in Orlando, I was training with one of the Louisville players. And we were shooting threes, and she has like a pretty nice shot. And our trainer was like, tell her that she needs to start shooting them in the game. And she's like, Jeff won't let me. And like, that's how it is sometimes. So it's like, at least I hope that they're getting reps up, because at the next level, if you can't knock that down in the next, I feel like, I would say in the next maybe 2 or 3 seasons, like all the post players are going to be shooting a few a game at this rate, the way the game is evolving. So that's that's like the point of view I'm looking at a team like that. Like, you do have future pros on that team. So I'm at least hoping that they are getting those reps in, even if they're not taking them on the court.
Yeah. And at this point, even in the college game, if you want to win, like, the game has evolved so much that you still need to get your 3-pointers off, even though it is college. And look, like, Madison Booker is a good 3-point shooter. Like, when she takes a 3-pointer, she's a really good 3-point shooter, but she's very mid-range heavy, which is fine. Like, that's like definitely part of her bag. But like, you see it in these moments where it's like, yo, like, I don't know if it's like a player preference thing. I don't know if it's a coach preference thing, but they have players who can shoot. Like, Jordan Lee can shoot as well. And it's just like, you guys are going to have to get some up at this point if you actually want to make a deep run.
Like, maybe
you don't have to, like, but it's cool that basketball looks different, you know? Like, everybody doesn't have to be doing threes and layups all the time, but come on, you know, you got to sprinkle them in. Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Do either of you guys have any strong college basketball takes before we move on a little bit to some WNBA talk?
Lexi has one about TCU.
I sure do. TCU. Final Four. Final Four. Yep. I'm on the HBO redemption arc train. I've been there since the beginning. I'm here for it. I've always been rooting for Haley, even when she had that rough season last year. But I know better than most people how important your environment is, how important fit is. And we typically don't see such a mismatched fit in the college game because the transfer rules were the way that they were. But now you kind of have to sometimes figure it out as you go and through experience. So I'm like really happy for her. I'm really excited for her. So yeah, that was my bold take the other day was TCU to the Final Four.
Mariah, you got one?
That's the boldest thing I've heard. I can't follow that.
I am here for HBL. No HBL slander is tolerated over here, okay?
Honestly, she's had an incredible comeback season. Like, it's truly one of the best stories in college basketball. So definitely happy for her. Definitely happy for her. Since we have you here, and there has been a lot of talk about, you know, the potential CBA negotiations, how they might go, I wanted to get your opinion, get some actual context into how these conversations are going, because if there's one thing about the WNBA, it's that players are going to be willfully misunderstood. So Angel Reese on her podcast, Unapologetically Angel, said she heard that if players don't get what they want, they're going to sit out. Now, because it's Angel, there was an effort to willfully misconstrue what she said. So let's just be clear here. She didn't say that she was sitting, that she was like leading this charge for players to sit out. She literally just said what she heard. But Lexi, you are a player rep. So I feel like I got to get your opinion on what actually is going on here.
I mean, let's preface this that she is not on the committee. So I don't know why people took that information out of all the messaging that has been said by multiple WNBA players and multiple WNBA players that are actually on the CBA committee.
You know why.
Yes, but I want to verbalize it so people can understand how stupid they are when they do this over and over and over to this young player, young woman, who's just like yapping on her podcast. Like, okay, like, should she have said that? Probably not, because we are literally in negotiations. Yeah. But she said it, okay? Yes, there's always the threat of a lockout situation. Like, that's what renegotiation period is. Like, you have to think of best case scenario and worst case scenario. For me personally, one of the worst case scenarios would be sitting out. because all of this momentum that we have and all this money that's coming in, for us to just halt it because we can't come to an agreement, which is ultimately what that means. Like, she said it in her very young, blatant way, like, if we don't get what we want, like, but y'all don't even know, like, what we want is. Y'all don't, like, people don't know that. Like, that could mean so many things. Obviously, higher salaries. That's high priority. That's always high priority for anybody in any job trying to move up. You want to get paid more. But there's a plethora of things that we discuss in these meetings. Obviously, I can't talk about them here. But, like, I'm very confident that we'll be able to come to an agreement. We have a lot of amazing minds in place. We have great advisors in place. Our meetings are long. They're meaningful. Like, people really care. I wasn't really involved in the last CBA negotiation, so I'm personally just learning a ton. And I'm just amazed at how hard we're all fighting for each other and for this league. So, yeah, we have a whole episode with Terry Jackson. Mm-hmm. If people really want to understand the CBA and what we're doing, because I know that most of them do not. But if they actually do, we have an entire episode dedicated to CBA talk. So I implore y'all to go check that out if you guys really do want to know, like, what's going on.
It's a good episode. You guys should listen to it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Very proud. We were very proud of that one. Yeah.
No, it's really good. I feel like I learned a lot about, like, what you guys are, like, and the differences between, like, the negotiations, like, before the bubble season versus now. And one thing I thought she said that was really interesting was, like, prepare for this one to be more of a fight, which it feels like this was maybe, like, the player's side. Like, I know it wasn't, like, necessarily something that you guys, like, you know, constructed, like, on a PR side to, like, have Angel come out and say that. But I do think that we should get used to, like, as fans, as media, this being the conversation. Because, like, the owners already threw out their opening salvo, and I don't think anybody talked about it as that because it was during the WNBA finals when there was that New York Post story about the W losing $40-50 million a year. Like, I think we all need to understand that all that stuff now comes in the context of a negotiation period in which everybody is trying to get leverage and nobody's actually going to be saying what the numbers are. Like, no franchise.
You literally can't.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Terry said it in our episode. She was like, we don't want this to become like a public back and forth spat, public opinion type situation. So yes, players can voice how they feel and things that they would prefer or whatever. But, like, at the end of the day, we all have to stand at a united front. And I think that's something that we do very well. Not saying that what she said has fractured anything. It hasn't. Because it is true. If we don't get things that we want or ask for, we can't come to a conclusion together, then yes, the lockout will happen. But it's happened in other sports. It's happened in the NBA a bunch of times. My dad was part of a lockout. Like, it happens. Like, it's not the complete end of the world. It was a lack of coming to an agreement. So I'm very confident that we will be able to come to an agreement because of the momentum of the league and women's sports. Like, I just don't think it would be wise for anybody to just be like, nah, let's just stop it. Like, all this momentum, all this money coming in, all this investment, all these eyes. So let's just cut this shit now. Like, that, personally, as a businesswoman, that just doesn't make sense to me. But again, like, we do have a long way to go. And I think the way we play and the product we put out this summer is going to be very important for these negotiations for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge WNBA season. I also want to add, too, like, when we talk about finances and stuff like that, I think franchise valuations just need to be something that gets talked about more from, like, the ownership side. Like, even if, like, okay, you can say, like, revenue might not necessarily be exactly where you want it. I also think the WNBA is a growth product. Like, we don't necessarily need to be thinking about profit right now. Like, right now is, like, you invest. Like, anybody who had a business like the WNBA right now would be thinking that if they were smart about how they handled their business. But also these franchise valuations. Aces bought in 2021 for $2 million. They are now worth $140 million. That's 70x in 4 years. Dallas had the lowest valuation. Like, it's a great bet. And these owners are benefiting in these ways that should be coming back to the players, but they're not going to.
Your owners act like they don't care. Then brands are going to think that they don't have to care. Future investors are going to act like they don't have to care because the people that are in charge of these teams don't care. So why would we care? And I think that's what's been the difference between the Seattles, the New Yorks, the Vegases. You have ownerships that are pouring into their organizations and they're getting championships. They're getting the best free agents. They're getting all these corporate dollars. They're getting all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the owners have been able to just kind of slide by because people are like, oh, we don't really care about the WNBA like that. So they've been able to just like slide by doing the bare minimum, but those days are over, and they know that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's important to note that the WNBA, quote unquote, not being profitable isn't an excuse for the players to not ask for the salaries that they deserve. I don't think people understand when they say stuff like that the NBA, any sports league, is not profitable in its like first 20, 30, 40 years of existing. The NBA didn't become profitable until Bird and Magic. Like it takes a very long time. That does not mean, however, that, like you said, valuations are important. Revenue, like making a certain percent of the revenue is important. Making a certain percent of things like your jersey sales, XYZ, are important. WNBA players aren't just like dumb and sick in the head asking for more money. Like, I think people have this misconception that it's like, oh, like they shouldn't be asking for that. Like, oh, the owners are so broke and oh, poor W. Like, no, they deserve to be asking for what they are asking for. And they're not being unreasonable about it either. I mean, you see Unrivaled paying their players the highest salary in professional women's sports. So that's not an excuse, the profit situation. That's very normal for any sports league. Doesn't make the W any lesser of a league.
Go off.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
I just feel very strongly about that because I feel like people the WNBA, being a WNBA player is like the only job where I feel like men especially, but people in general say, oh, you shouldn't be asking for a higher salary.
Mm-hmm. What I'm saying, like if any job, if you feel like you're doing an exceptional job, exceptional work, you should be compensated appropriately for the work that you're doing. Like it's just not limited to sports. It's like limited to life. It's like life. It's a life thing.
There's also a macro level.
Walking around like you think that you have outperformed your current salary. You're not going to ask for a raise.
Mm-hmm. There's also a macro level thing going on here too, where women are simultaneously criticized for making less money because they're not asking for enough. Like women, like anytime you talk about like the gender wage gap, there's a conversation of, oh, well, like women don't negotiate as well. They're more likely to take
like closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah, but then when you like go out and you start advocating for yourself,
not too much.
Exactly. I know you don't necessarily want to get into specifics about the CBA, but since we're talking about college basketball, I have to ask you, Juju Watkins earlier this year said that players should be able to declare for the draft early if they want to. And look, this is somebody who could be in the WNBA right now, I think. Like, she could go in this draft. She could have gone out of high school if she wanted to. Is changing the draft eligibility age, is that at all a conversation that's been on the table? Can you talk about that?
It hasn't come up yet. It has been mentioned. I don't think it's a high priority. I personally have always died on this hill of education is important. So I personally will never be like, yeah, lower the eligibility, because now we're going to have a bunch of young adults without college, young women, not even young adults, young women running around without college degrees. I'm never going to support that. Like, if it happens, cool. People can make whatever decisions they want with their futures and their careers. But I've always been like, take all you can get from the college. And now with the NIL, like, there's really no reason to not stay. You're to make money and get your degree and grow your game. And going out into the world at 18, 19 years old as a young woman with no degree to go play a sport with non-guaranteed contracts, it's kind of like a recipe for a disaster, in my opinion, right now. But again, I feel like we're talking about this once-in-a-lifetime player. Like, you have Juju. Who else right now would be able to come out? So, like, I'm like, yes, you can change the eligibility requirement. So, like, a player like Juju would be able to come out and leave. But, like, I want her to break all the records. I want her to leave her mark. I want her to do all that stuff. Leave with a degree from USC. The WNBA, like, the window is like, it's not like how the NBA is. Like, you're not going to age out of your window, kind of like how you can in the NBA. Like, that's not a thing. So
I also think that's easy for a player like Juju or even a player like a Paige Bueckers to say, because you're on billboards all over California. Of course, you're down at,
You're
yeah,
probably
whatever.
tired of college.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you're gonna be okay.
And she might not need to use that degree. You know what I'm saying? However, I feel like it's important to note that outside of just the education aspect, which I think is important, it's also such a good introductory course into watching women's basketball for a new fan. I think that it's great for the women's game that we watch these rivalries, these storylines, these records, all of these things brew while they're at college, because women's sports are always fighting uphill for this like almost respect or recognition that's really negative to say, but it's the truth. And as fans, I think it's a lot easier for people to get into it when their favorite athlete is in college. I'm sure, Lexi, you've noticed this, but there's like this way that people treat women's college basketball players where when they get into the W, people are like, and like so much more mean to them. So I think that allowing them to establish those fan bases, i.e. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and those rivalries and storylines while in college and then carry those on to the W is beneficial. And I think something that the NBA, the MNBA, as my hotties on TikTok like to call it, that they're missing, because I don't personally really care what's going on in the men's tournament because I don't know who they are. So like, I think that it's beneficial to a player like a Juju or a player like a Paige to watch them lose and come back, beat UCLA and then lose to them, and have fans that might not tune into a W game, but went to USC and love USC, watch Juju and then be like, okay, well, when she gets drafted, I'm going to follow her career. So I think that from a marketing aspect, I don't think it would be smart of the W to take that away.
Exactly. I agree with that completely. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you see, like, one thing I've been thinking about is, like, these new players coming into the league, and it's like, you know, it starts with like Caitlin, Angel, Cam, Rakia. Your new teammate, Nika Mule, just signed a deal with Under Armour. You know, they're coming in with all of these endorsements, like their NIL deals transfer over to pro endorsements. And, you know, like, I'll bring up another Angel Reese example that she got criticized for when she said that her $70K salary doesn't cover her rent. But the thing that I took away from that was like, oh, wait, like this isn't her primary salary, and it's not the primary salary of a lot of these stars. And on some level, that's like always been somewhat of the case with like the WNBA players, like making a lot more money off the court.
NBA,
but now,
what percentage was it? We literally were just, I think it was like 70%.
I just spoke about this. 77% of so they released the list of the 100 highest paid athletes in the world. And for the male athletes, around 77% of their revenue for the year came from their salary, from their sport, their day job. Whereas for women, a majority of their salary came from endorsements, sponsorships, social media, things like that.
So it's night and day. And now I think the women obviously have benefited from it because they're allowed to just be themselves in college. Same with the W. I mean, it's trickling down. It took some time for the W to even be like, okay, like, we're just going to let everybody finally just be who they are, build their brands and all this kind of other stuff. I mean, it's been a process. When I got drafted, like, it was frowned upon to have any type of social media presence that had nothing to do with basketball. I remember.
Really?
Like, it was a battle I fought from day one of, why are you on Instagram all the time? What are you doing on YouTube? Like, what do you mean you're vlogging? So just seeing the change and how impactful it's been from the pro level to the college level to the high school level, like, it's been amazing because it's something that I've always really enjoyed doing. I really enjoy doing content and making content. And I never thought I'd be able to like make money off of content. Like, it was just something I like did for fun because I was bored all the time. My rookie year. Like, that's really when I kind of like really leaned into like the YouTubes and the Instagram because I like literally had nothing else to do. I wasn't playing. So I had to like make sure that I was like keeping myself motivated and happy and enjoying myself while dealing with that. So like seeing that players are able to just do that in college now and be themselves and build their brands before they even become a professional athlete. Like, I think it's so fire. Like, it's so cool to me. I think it's great.
Yeah. And like on the negotiation side of it, there's two things where if you're a WNBA player, especially if you're one of these stars, you can potentially say, hey, you know what? Like, this isn't actually a big enough part of my income for me to decide that like we're gonna like cave in negotiations. But also, if you're WNBA teams, like just as an employer who wants like your players to be focused on the game, you want to make sure that you're their number one salary. Like, I think that's just smart business.
Same with prioritization. Like, that backfired probably more than they thought it would.
Yeah.
And then, I think this is probably the first negotiation period where there's enough players that could probably live a little bit of time without their WNBA salaries. And I don't think that's ever been the reality before. Or they have, like, sponsorships, or they have brands that would, help them out in the case of a lockout. Like, I don't know that. That's completely assumption on my end. But, like, from my personal standpoint, like, if I went without my W salary, like, it would not be the end of the world. Do I want my WNBA salary? Absolutely.
Of course. Yeah.
But for the benefit of the league, and if I would have to sit out and not have a WNBA salary, then I would be like, okay. But that's also not the reality for a lot of players. Like, again, I don't want to do that. Yeah. One, because I don't want to not play basketball. Like, let's take all the money away from me. Like, I would not be able to play basketball. So
I do want to acknowledge the fact that every single player isn't going to be, well, I love the creator economy and I think it's incredible for women. It's one of the only spaces where women actually are bankrolling more than men. So I love the creator economy and I think it's great for sports. However, there's going to come a time where we're going to say, okay, well, not every really talented athlete is born to be a social media star. Exactly. And nor do they want to do that. And so I don't think it's really fair. To expect them, okay, if you want to make a really good living and you want to make a higher salary, if you're not happy with your W salary, well, that might not cover Angel's rent, but there are players on the sky where that's what they're making. So it's like, we have to acknowledge that even though it's like, okay, you can do all these other things to make money, it's like, but I also need to focus on being a great player. And some people don't want to do that. That's why it is important that they ask for their worth in negotiations and in their salaries, because whereas the men get to just show up and play and ball and have the money on top of that to hire people to do their social media for them. Like, the women don't have that luxury. You're vlogging, you're editing, and then you're going to practice. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. Before I let you guys go, I'm curious, like, how did the idea for this podcast come together?
Well, I tried to start my own podcast in 2021, right before I was signed with the Sky, and then ultimately got waived by the Sky, which is why I stopped doing the podcast, because I was like, okay, again, to Mariah's point, like, yes, I want to do all these other things, but my main job is playing basketball. So, like, let me go focus on that, because why am I making a podcast if I'm not on the team? So that stopped. Mariah and I connected on TikTok when my 2K character video went viral, and everyone was like on my ass about wanting my 2K character to have a ponytail and look like present like a human being,
a woman.
And Mariah had my back, so that's how we connected on TikTok. And then she had me on her podcast, her Hoops for Hotties podcast, and it was just a vibe. So when I was approached by iHeart with this podcast idea, and they were like, do you want to do by yourself, or do you want to have a co-host? And I obviously wanted to have I could not do this by myself. And I had two names, Andrea Carter and Mariah. So those were the two people that I knew I would love to do a show with. And ultimately, Mariah was the one that worked out. Thankfully, I'm so happy, because this was like exactly what I was dreaming about when I had this idea for what I wanted it to be. So yeah, very organic, very cutesy, very, very natural. And we're having so much fun. And we just started. It's been 5 episodes, 6 episodes? Like, we're just getting started. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I've enjoyed listening to it so far. You guys had obviously an episode with Terry Jackson, had some interviews with Michaela Blakes and Camille Pierre. That's one of my favorite teams to watch.
Yeah, they were fun. They were awesome. They silenced us because we had a lot of criticisms for the youngins.
Yeah,
and they're like, you better come correct.
Yeah, so not too much on us. Yeah, yeah. That was a fun interview. Also, finding out that Camille Pierre is playing basketball for like 4 years was
I was very impressed.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. But everybody go listen to their podcast. It's been a lot of fun to just, watch you guys do your thing so far. And I'll be listening in the future. Thank you so much for hopping on the show today as well.
Of course. This was good.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.